Hi, everybody. Glad you're here with us again today. So, we're still reading in the book Dooger, the Grasshopper Hound. We're on chapter 3 now. A stranger called Bones. Wasn't exactly what DJ had intended to say, but the minute the words were out, he meant it. DJ explained his idea to his friend. We'll train that little red pup to follow a person's trail. Then we'll find a clue someplace where the firebug has been, and we'll capture him. Think what a great story I'll be able to write for the Gazette. Alfred used his right thumb to lift the bridge of his glasses. They were nearly as thick as the bottom of a water glass. Alfred was very sensitive because other kids often teased him. I like a mystery and excitement and adventure as much as anybody, Alfred said thoughtfully, but I see some problems, such as, first off, the professional investigators haven't been able to catch the arsonist. Next, the fire probably burns up any clues. Then, I'm not sure any hound can follow a trail where there's smoke and ashes. Finally, it could be dangerous. DJ thought about that. Well, then we could just do the story about how forest fires are fought. We could do that. Of course, there's nothing to keep us from taking the pup along to train him when we're out covering the story. Nothing to keep us from doing that, Alfred agreed. Good. Then let's get him now and start training him. An hour later, the two friends were standing at the edge of the stony ridge where the last road ran alongside the range of mountains. The boys were at 3,500 feet above sea level, but the ranges climbed rapidly to better than twice that elevation. So 3,500 feet is already very high. So those mountain ridges got super high. All the mountains were part of the Sierra Nevadas that separated California from the sagebrush of Nevada. From where he stood in the open area of Stony Ridge, DJ could see thousands of evergreen trees. Alfred, who planned to be a naturalist, had told DJ these were mostly ponderosa pine and sugar pine that soared up to 200 feet in the air. That's really, really high. There were also some Douglas fir. Hey, they have that around where I live. Western fir, black oak, and a few other types of trees. They had all combined to spread a green blanket over the mountains. Above them, DJ could see thunderheads building towards South Lake Tahoe, or maybe Virginia City and Reno, Nevada beyond. He could also see something else. Looks like smoke, DJ said, pointing. Alfred shaded his eyes. It is. There goes the first air tanker. They're having a busy summer, DJ said. Well, let's get started training this pup. Alfred brought out a small book on dog training. It only took the boys a few minutes to discover the red hound had been fairly well trained. He could fetch, heel, come, and stay. So fetch would be when you throw something, he would go get it and bring it back to you. Heel is when he would walk by your feet. Come is when he would come when you called. And stay is when he would sit, even when you walked away. But he couldn't roll over. Obviously, Alfred said, pushing his glasses up, whoever trained him was a practical person. There's no need for a real hound to roll over. So, DJ added, That means this pup has probably already been trained somewhat in trailing. We'll soon find out, Alfred said. Come on, Dodger. Let's go see how good a nose you have. The boys walked to the last street in town before an open field with the first stand of timber beyond. The conifers marched up the first mountain range towards the high Sierras. By the time the boys got there, they had worked out a plan. DJ would take Hero with him and leave Dodger with Alfred. DJ and Hero would cross the vacant field towards the stand of timber. There, DJ would drop his handkerchief and go on zigzagging through the trees. Alfred would find the handkerchief, hold it up for the pup to smell, then urge the hound to find DJ. Okay, Alfred agreed. Let's go. 5 minutes later, DJ was hiding behind a bushy young ponderosa that grew in an open area. The 3 needled clusters on the scaly branches came right down to the ground. If the tree had been back in the forest, competition for life would have kept the limbs from growing on the lower branches of the trunk. DJ had chosen this particular tree so he could climb up on the lower branches and hide from Dodger. As DJ peered through the ponderosa's branches, he sucked in his breath. Oh, oh, he exclaimed softly. Here comes Nels Abbas. But who's that with him? Nels was 15, son of a professional bear hunter, and not much of a student. In fact, he hated school. But he reminded DJ of a sourpuss that had just swallowed a gallon full of vinegar. His face looked as though a herd of wild horses had run over it. That was because Nels was a bully. His face had been scarred from fighting with almost every boy in school. Nels usually won, but not always. His bright, hard eyes also proved he was full of meanness, like a weasel. Nels had repeated 2 whole grades, but this spring he had finally graduated from Stony Ridge Grammar School, where DJ and his friends attended. Nels was supposed to start high school in September, but he was already talking of quitting school as soon as he was legally old enough to. Nels' favorite victims were DJ and Alfred. If Nels saw Alfred alone with the red pup, Nels would probably do something mean to the boy and the pup. But if DJ and Hero were there also, Nels might not do anything. DJ whistled to Hero and left the shelter of the trees. The boy walked back the way he'd come. He picked up his handkerchief, stuffed it in his hip pocket, and hurried back to Alfred. Nels had just bent and picked up the red pup by the scruff of his neck. Held him just like this, by the scruff of his neck, and held him up for his friend to see. The hound dog's legs dangled in the air. DJ heard the pup cry out in pain. Hey, DJ yelled, running now. Hey, don't hurt him. Nels ran a hard hand over his forehead, brushing the long hair out of his eyes. Well now, there's the missing dog boy. Nels turned to his friend. Bones, I hope you brought some spray or something to drive off these bugs. These are the worst in Stony Ridge. Nels jerked his head towards DJ and Alfred. The tall, skinny kid called Bones laughed, his thin cheeks drawing into a hollow of his face. DJ thought this was about the closest he'd ever come to seeing a human skeleton with skins. Bones wore a red bandana around his head like a band, so DJ could only see the top of the older boy's head. The hair was a muddy brown and hadn't been combed in a long time. But his eyes were most yellow, DJ noticed, They had a strange brightness in them where they sank back into the bony sockets. DJ reached for the dangling pup, but Nails twisted away, holding the dog high and out of reach. Now, just a minute. You're liable to give my new pup fleas, Alfred cried. He's not your dog. He's mine. Put him down. You're hurting him. I'll hurt you, you little four-eyed frog. Nails set the pup down so hard he cried and shook and stood. You're hurting him, DJ said. Leave him alone. Who's gonna make me? Nails lifted both arms and slowly closed his fists. Who's gonna make me? Both DJ and Alfred hesitated. Nails was older and tougher and had been fighting since he was a little kid. Bones was probably 15 and stood taller than the other three boys, but a good breath of wind would have blown him away like a dandelion blossom. Nails' lips curled into a sneer. Well, now, I'll tell you what. I'll just use this little red pooch for a football and see how high I can kick him. Bones, run down their ways and see if you can catch him. Nails drew back his foot, both DJ and Alfred stepping forward, putting themselves between Nails and the pup. It was an almost automatic response, but Nails didn't care. Well, maybe I better kick both of you out of the way first, Nails sneered. He drew back his foot, but a low growl stopped him. His eyes flickered down to Hero. The little mixed breed's mutt hackles were standing stiffly up on his neck and shoulders. His hair was standing up. The upper lip was curled back, showing white fangs. Hey, call off your mutt, DJ. Put your foot down slowly. Nails obeyed. DJ spoke softly to Hero. The dog settled on his stub tail and looked at the boy. There goes my clock. No need to get hostile, Nails said gently. I just want to see your pup. We're trading him, Alfred said. You are? What for? To trail people and things. Bloodhounds do that, you know, Alfred said quickly. Bones jerked suddenly like a puppet on a string. DJ frowned, but his thoughts went back to Nails. Let's see him trail something, Nails suggested. DJ said, we haven't started yet. Well, looks like he's already trailing things. Look at your pooch. The little red hound pup had stopped dead in the dry yellow grass at the edge of the field. His legs were tense as he slowly eased forward. His long neck stuck out so far, his nose was just above the dry grass. DJ could hear the pup sniffing. The long floppy ears fell across his eyes so DJ couldn't see what he was watching, but the pup was tracking something. The little hound slowly moved forward, carefully lifting one pillow-sized paw after the other and setting them down. The long droopy ears seemed to be almost lifted by the pup's concentration. Suddenly he raised his hind leg and jumped ahead. His forelegs went up in the air, then down hard. A brown grasshopper leaped away with a startled buzzing sound. Nails threw back his head and roared. A grasshopper hound! That's what you got yourselves. A genuine, bony-fed grasshopper hound. Come on, Bones. We don't want to mess around with anything as dangerous as a grasshopper hound. Nails and Bones went off laughing. DJ felt uncomfortable. He said, come on, Alfred, let's go. Nails' voice came back to them. Grasshopper hound! DJ and Alfred exchanged glances. They knew they had not heard the last of that mocking term. That Sunday, as Sam Dillon pulled the old pickup to the church parking lot, Alfred pushed himself away from the front church steps where he'd been waiting. DJ had felt squashed in the single seat of the pickup bed. Mom, Pris, and DJ was glad to jump down on the paved lot and rush to meet his friend. Alfred cried, "Guess what? Dad says I can keep the pup." "That's great," DJ exclaimed, pounding his friend on the back. "Now we can train him all summer." Alfred frowned. "That's trouble is, Tags decided that it's his dog, and the feeling seems to be mutual. So it's my dog, only by rights, I guess." Before DJ could reply, the Stagg family pulled up and parked beside the boys. Greetings were exchanged. Paul Stagg was a giant of a man with a full head of reddish hair. He was a former bear hunter who pastored the small community church. His wife was pretty and lively. Their daughter, Kathy, was a year younger than DJ. Kathy was taller than any boy in her class. Her hair was reddish gold and her eyes were deep blue. Her face and bare arms were one solid mass of freckles. She had the most radiant smile DJ had ever seen. The one problem with Kathy was that she and DJ always seemed to take different sides on almost everything. "Morning, boys," the big man said with a smile and a booming voice. He shook hands with them, his huge hand totally covering theirs. "DJ, I've got a message for you." Kathy's excitement caused her to break in. "Dad ran into the newspaper editor last night at Indian Springs, and he said you can go ahead with that forestry story. Isn't that exciting, DJ?" "Sure is. Thanks, Kathy, Brother Paul." "One more thing," the big man rumbled. "Elmer Kirsten said that if you do a good job, he'll send a photographer to take pictures to go with your story. DJ, seems you're about to make it big time." The lay preacher and his wife turned away to greet other people arriving for services. Kathy hesitated, her blue eyes catching DJ's for a moment. She lowered her eyes, but the boy kept looking at her until he felt Alfred nudge him. "Hey, aren't you going to celebrate, DJ? You've got your first big break in journalism." DJ looked away from Kathy and started to walk towards the church with Alfred. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Kathy fall in step behind him. DJ sensed that Kathy was looking at the back of his head. It gave him a funny feeling, especially when he remembered that Pris had said Kathy had told her DJ was the cutest boy in school. "Sure, Alfred, sure. Boy, that'll be a great story. And we'll get to learn from all the inside information to help us find that firebug, too." "Firebug?" Kathy asked, taking a couple of quick steps to come even with the boys. "You mean the one who's been setting those timber fires? We're going to trail him with my hound and capture him," Alfred announced. "Aren't we, DJ?" "Gonna try," DJ admitted, "but we're not going to get into any trouble, you understand. We're going to be mighty careful." "I sure hope so," Kathy said soberly, looking at DJ. "I mean, don't do anything dangerous." Alfred scoffed. "Ha! Danger is our business." DJ was looking sharply at his friend. DJ wondered if Alfred was trying to impress Kathy. Alfred certainly hadn't talked that way when he was with DJ. Kathy shook her reddish hair so it fell like a spring waterfall over her face. "DJ Dillon, don't you talk about not doing anything dangerous. Why, in the months I've known you, you've been in more scary situations than any boy in school." DJ started to protest, then stopped. He remembered the time he saved her from the mad bear, and everyone said that DJ was a hero. DJ had almost had his foot eaten off when a pain-maddened outlaw bear chased him up a tree. That's when DJ made his Christian commitment. Then there had been the experiences with Coco, the bear cub that DJ had rescued when his mother bear had been killed in the wilderness. Yeah, DJ said slowly, sometimes things do get exciting. Alfred spoke bravely again. It was something he didn't do when he and DJ were alone. Well, things can't get too exciting for me, he told Kathy. Us future naturists have got to go out where it's dangerous sometimes, you know. DJ wasn't sure he'd ever heard of a naturist who did anything dangerous, but he didn't want to say that in front of his best friend. DJ looked at Kathy. She stopped at the foot of the steps that led into the small frame church. You be careful, won't you, DJ? He looked at her a long time, then slowly nodded. He felt uncomfortably warm and decided it'd be cooler in the church. Be careful, I'll be careful, he answered, starting up the 3 steps. Alfred said, don't worry, Kathy. I'll be there to help. And so will my new hound. Kathy's laughter was bright and pleasant as a wind chime. That's what I'm afraid of, she cried and hurried to join some girlfriends in the back pew. DJ thoughtfully looked after Kathy. For the first time he remembered she hadn't made him half mad by taking a different viewpoint from his. It was a nice change. But he had the feeling it wouldn't last. He quickly put the thought aside and tried to think about Sunday school lesson as he studied the night before for his morning class. But as he glanced out the north side of the little church's small windows, he stopped in his tracks. A new column of smoke was just beginning to rise above the line of evergreens that marched up the mountains towards the eastern horizon. DJ's mind leaped into the idea, and he and Alfred had for catching the firebug so DJ could write a newspaper story about it. The boy shivered in spite of the summer heat, knowing something exciting was about to happen. And that is the end of chapter 3. Boy, that firebug is starting so many fires. I hope they'll be careful. Well, that's the end of that one. So tomorrow we'll be reading Sometime Nothing Works Right. Oh dear. I've had times that I felt like that. Well, I just want to remind you that I love you. I really do. And more importantly, God loves you and He always will. So you have a good night or a good day, whichever it is where you're at. And we'll be together again tomorrow reading the next chapter. All right, take care and God bless.